This is a message to all my supporters of this podcast. I'm introducing a new supporters program. You can contribute a small amount as a one-off payment to show your love for this podcast. Thank you in advance for all your contributions. I just wanted to let you know before we start the podcast that I am doing an online podcast course, how to be able to create, get your guests, scale it and monetize it. So please do go to abmpodcastcourse.co.uk and go into the contact us bit. I'm looking for new people to be able to be a podcast creator and really to be able to develop their skills and knowledge into a podcast. So as I said, go to abmpodcastcourse.co.uk and sign up. Thanks. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. I'm a corporate employee with an entrepreneurial mindset. This podcast will help and support you with new ideas about business. These are my thoughts, ideas, and comments. Today, I have Royston Cumberbatch, who is an expert in business and finance. Hi, Royston. How are you?
Hi, I'm very good, and thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining. We've already met on. You were one of the people on my podcast course, so we're expecting to share links at some stage of your podcast. I'm happy to share it on my platform as well.
Of course, yeah. I'll be launching that within the next week or so.
Excellent. All right, Royston. Let's go back to your origin story of your time in Grenada. Just do a little bit of scene setting of your early life in Grenada.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, growing up in Grenada, I guess, was quite different to how it is now, you know. I recall, like, playing a lot of sports, and sometimes we actually used to play in the main road as well. There wasn't much vehicles, you know. Yeah. So we used to play a lot of cricket in the road, and lots of football as well. And, you know, it was very much, if you want to describe it, as free range. You know, you can just run, you can go to the neighbors, you can do everything, you know, and I think, as you know, from a very early age, I got involved in military life. But I quite remember even before that, I actually do remember even my grandparents, and I actually remember that the way they live, you know, and it was very much like a lot of farming, a lot of cane fields, a lot of, you know, we used to pitch marbles, we used to play a lot of games, you know. I knew all my cousins, and we actually spent time with each other. Much different than the way it is today.
Yeah, well, the thing is, in my early life in 1980s, knowing your extended family was something very regular, and that's reduced more in the UK as well. So I think it's a trend within the world that you don't live close to your relatives these days.
Correct, yeah, because I knew all my cousins. We used to go and spend time by each other. They were almost like just like your brothers and your sisters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that was quite a nice time.
All right, so you mentioned about your military experience. Would you say one of the things you described was that discipline is very important to you? Do you think that the origins of your discipline comes from your military experience?
From my military experience, but I would say it goes back a little bit earlier. I would say from my days as a Cub Scout. You know, I was a Cub Scout. I was a scout, so you know you had to learn to do what they said to do. You know, you had to follow a lot of rules. There was some code of conduct, the way you behave, and you must turn up on time. So I learned that discipline from there, and then I became a military cadet while I was in secondary school, and that's a lot of discipline. You know, even just learning to do military marches and again the way you dress, the way you conduct yourself. You know, your shoes has to be polished. And I spent some time in the militia as well, which was not so formal as the military cadets, which was kind of secondary school children, you know. But because there was a revolution at the time, I guess the cadets was a bit more military than a normal cadet.
Right. And when I have interviewed people who have military experience, they often talk about how they have to make their bed in the morning. Well, is that the same for you?
Yeah, I mean, the days in the militia, whenever you I mean, yeah, it's kind of crazy. You have to make your bed. As a cadet, actually, as a military cadet, that's one of the things you learn to do. You must make your bed crisp. It must be crisp every day you wake up. You must dust it down. Your surrounding must be very clean. Your boots must be very polished.
And does it, do you still subscribe to that now?
Well, I do make my bed when I get up in the morning. Yes,
Are you polished now, Royce?
yeah. Actually, when I was working in the city and stuff, I kind of made it a deal to polish my shoes, because I think what I found is that is a saying: people judge you by your shoes, right? You know, most of the time people look down and they go, "Oh, he's got scruffy shoes." That sends signals about who you are. So I try my best to wear clean and tidy shoes.
Right. Okay. And we're going to talk about your time in the city in due course. But what made you study accountancy in Grenada? What was the inspiration for accountancy?
Yeah, it's quite a good question. Number one, at a young age, I wanted to be a pilot at one time. Right. Then I decided maybe I wanted to do electronics engineering, because I was one of these people who, after the revolution had finished, I took school very serious. And I was doing every subject that the school had to offer. I even did subjects that the school and Grenada was not offering. For example, I did O-level engineering. So accounts was just a subject that the school is offering, and I did it. As a matter of fact, I did accounts part-time because it was clashing with another subject. I found accounting very easy, and I found that I actually enjoyed it as well, because it was like, it's a bit of business, you know, and it's kind of understanding how to account for numbers. I guess I did fall in love with numbers at a young age. So I liked, you know, accounts, and I took extra lessons in it. I was so passionate about it. I actually took extra lessons in it. And what really inspired me to become a qualified accountant was actually I was working at this hotel. And I remember that the chief accountant, she's from England. And she seemed to have the best life, you know, and I was like, wow, she's a chief accountant, you know, and even her boss, which is a regional chief, came down and they had the best life. And I also knew a few people on the island as well who were accountancy firm, have accountants. So it seems to me like a very lucrative job to have. Right. So after all attempts to become an engineer had failed, I then kind of went back to do accounting, which for me was very easy.
So we're going to jump around a little bit. I just want to ask you one of my sort of generic questions, which is about mentors in your life.
Yeah.
Say, just name a couple of people in your life that you would describe as a mentor that's helped you.
Yeah, so for example, I mean, some of the mentors are like back home, you know, like if I call it like Desmond Latouche is one guy, you know, he's kind of in the, you know, he was a dean in a school, you know. I mean, he even got me one of my part-time teaching jobs. I remember a lady in the neighborhood named Monique Noel. I mean, these are people, by the way, who, if you want to call it from a class structure perspective, these are like middle to upper class people. And, you know, you as a kind of someone in the community who's from a working class, you know, Grenada is a small place. So they quickly find out that this guy has done well at school, you know, and in the community, you know, they want to congratulate you. They want to talk to you. And that's what they do. They goes, hey, you done well done. You got 9 subjects. Wow. So what are you going to do next, you know? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get a job, you know what I mean? They goes, don't get a job, you know, go on and further your studies. And I goes, I ain't got no money for that. Come on. And they might even help you, you know. So that's probably why I started getting part-time jobs and I started, you know. So I think mentors for me are one of the most important thing I would say anyone can have in terms of like progressing themselves, whether it's in a career, whether it's in business. I mean, I think it's invaluable to have mentors. Now, as I progressed even up until recently, up until now, I still have people who, some of the mentors I have now, they don't even know that they're my mentor, you know? Right. So for example, as a professional speaker, as someone who is offering accountancy and finance services to business owners, I asked around, and people said that I should follow this guy called Keith Cunningham.
Okay.
Oh, he's an American guy. He's an old guy. He doesn't know me, but I would say he's like my mentor because he's an accountant, and he's lost 100 million. He's made it back, and what he does is that he helps business owners to become more financially intelligent, right? To make better decisions. That's exactly what I'm doing, and that's exactly what I aspire to do. So I have mentors as well who people don't even know that they're my mentor.
I totally agree. I think sort of online mentors is something that is, I suppose, relatively recent, but with the advent of YouTube and podcasts and things like that, you can definitely delve into other people's lives and learn from their experiences and their stories. For me, early doors was someone like Tim Ferriss from a podcasting point of view. I loved his style. I loved how he conducted himself. There's a guy in the UK called Rob Moore, who does property and entrepreneurial stuff. And I've gone deep into their sort of story as well, because I think you can obviously, so I've had a mentor in my life for 5 or 6 years as well, who's a physical that I meet every week or every other week. But the online mentors, I think, are really valuable for people to be able to learn and understand and learn from people's mistakes, so you don't make the same mistakes as them.
Correct. I mean, you can even go one step further to say, so one of the guys I listened to a lot before actually Tony Robbins, right? As a matter of fact, Keith Cunningham also speaks on Tony Robbins' stage. Wow. And these guys say something. They says, don't recreate success, or don't try to do it, try to invent success, model someone.
Yeah.
Find someone who's,
I think everyone has, well, a lot of people that probably listen to mine have started on Tony Robbins and started and been inspired by him.
Yes, exactly. He's good. He's a good guy. Yeah. So I would say model someone, get a mentor, find someone who has had the failures, who has had the successes, and understand, for what they've done, and follow them. And that has helped me a lot in my lifetime.
Awesome. So so you moved to the UK. Was it difficult moving, the weather, the lifestyle, living in London?
Yeah. But first of all, I would say it was a visionary move, in the sense of, even when I lived in Canada for a very short time, I had a vision of, like, I don't know, something. I think it was one of my teachers, he was telling me that, UK is a good place for me because they had polytechnics, place you can do business and science, which is what I did. So coming to the UK was something like I aspired to. And then I actually applied to the Navy, but I didn't get through.
Okay.
I got a scholarship to Cambridge, but my grades weren't good enough. So I was like really on a path of, like, I'm going to the UK by all means necessary, And when I came here, it was like, it was different to any place I've been. I mean, I've been to Canada before, as I said. I've been to probably one or two other places in the Caribbean, but it was like, wow, all the houses look like factories, It's like all the chimneys, like, what the hell is this? Is quite different, and the very long roads and stuff. And I was like, look, I settled in quite quickly because I came to study, but I find it very cold. I find that the people a bit cold as well, and I did kind of suffer a bout of, if you want to call it, depression. Being in your room and it's so cold. I remember having to wear like 3 jumpers inside.
I understand that.
Yeah, and probably because where I was living, maybe they had turned the central heating off, and I don't know, you know what I mean, So yeah, it was tough. It was tough.
How did you sort of start embedding yourself in the community in the UK?
That's a very good question. So I went to church. I went to church. So one of the very first things I did when I came to the UK, because just before I came here from Grenada, I mean, I have a strong spiritual background. I would say spiritual more so than religious. So actually, one of my mentors, by the way, is a guy actually who is a minister back home. Well, his name slipped me right now, but anyway, but he's a minister. So Selwyn Halen. of Garden of Prayer, right? So I used to actually help build the church as well.
Mm.
It's a big church, air-conditioned church back home.
Mm.
And I spent a lot of time around him. And I was inspired as well by him. So when I came to the UK, one of the first thing I did was to look for a church.
Yeah.
And then I actually joined a small church with some older people. And they're like, oh, you can come for coffee. You can do this. Because it was older. I didn't know who it was, you know. It must have been like literally about 20 people in the church. It was just the closest church to where I was living.
Yeah.
Then I found a bigger one, which is Brixton New Testament Church. And I went there, and actually there were some people with my surname, Cumberbatch.
Oh.
And they draw to me like, hey, you got same surname like us. But they were like, I think Barbadian or Jamaicans, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I got some friends. I went on a few trips with them, you know, to Margate and stuff. And yeah, I got some really good friends through that community. And that was kind of the start of, like, obviously from college as well, because I came to study accountancy. So being in college, there's a community there as well of, you know, Africans and Caribbean people. And then, yeah, I found my way. Then you start to go out. Like, you know, to what we call like the soca parties, like, you know, parties. Then you're like, oh, you are here. I mean, there are people I'm meeting who I didn't even know they were here, or I didn't think that they were here, you know. And therefore you start to reconnect with people you know from the past, not necessarily as friends, but one of the things is that when you leave a small island and you come to a big place like here, all of a sudden, if the person is from your country, you kind of have an interest in speaking to them or becoming friends with them.
Yeah.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe, and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
Yeah. So you spent 19 years in the financial services. You moved around a bit.
Yeah.
Different places. Why did you? Were you moving for promotions? Were you moving for other reasons? Like.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I reflect on it a couple of times, and what I would say is that actually I only read it afterwards, but after reading Richard Dad Poor Dad, you know, he says, don't do a job for money, do a job for the skills.
Yes, and what you learn, absolutely.
Yeah, and what you can learn. And I think I was always interested in doing jobs for the skills. One of the reasons I moved around, I literally, even as an accountant, I don't like monotonous. I don't like doing reporting. I didn't like doing reporting. Same thing monthly, same thing quarterly, same thing yearly. I've done it for a bit, and I quickly moved on to let's automate stuff, let's change stuff. So in my early career, I built like investment management systems. Obviously working with IT, I built push button reporting systems. I built budgetary control systems, and to some extent, I'm looking right because I was ambitious. You know, I was like, hang on a minute, there ain't no promotion coming here, man. There ain't no promotion. I mean, I kind of feel like there's a ceiling.
Yeah.
So I spent 5 years in one company. I learned a lot of stuff with a small company, really good people. They were called Württembergische UK. They're now called Antares. Really great people. I learned a lot there, you know. And then I became a financial controller for a company. And then that was good, but I was a bit disappointed with some of the things they promised me, but they didn't fulfill on it. So one of my highest values is called integrity.
Yeah.
So if someone's going to do something, I like them to fulfill on it.
I talk about that on my podcast a lot. If you commit to something, you have to deliver. I really,
so,
I don't try and tolerate people that promise things and under-deliver.
Yeah, so I mean, they said to me they're going to pay off because I left prematurely. I didn't finish pay off for my MBA. Basically, the first company sponsored my MBA. When I left, I had some money outstanding for them, but the companies who I went to said they'll pay it off, and they didn't. And I can't hang around here if you're not being honest with me. So I moved to Aviva. Aviva was a really good move. You know, it's a big company. I was doing a big role in terms of overseeing operations in Norwich, overseeing operations in Sri Lanka, and overseeing operation in Guernsey. I'm based in London. It was a really like, wow, this is one of the, you know, the biggest companies I had actually worked for at the time.
Yeah.
And then I did that for a while. I could have stayed in the reinsurance for a while, but then I kind of got internally headhunted to because I think my ability to put systems and controls in place. I got pulled up with a job at Aviva Investors where they needed someone with a good financial control background.
Right.
So I went there and put some stuff in place. And actually, I resigned from that job. Sometimes I said it was a bad move, but it was a very good job. I think it's one of the biggest projects I ever led. I was responsible for the substantiation of 159 billion pounds.
Wow. You
actually hired a team of around 5 accountants. I had a project manager, I had BA, I had a kind of a PA, and we took JP Morgan to task, you know, to really understand, is this money fully accounted for, you know, operationally and from a financial reporting perspective. And then we did some shared service stuff, and we put the oversight of that JP Morgan service in York. So the function kind of went to York.
Yeah.
There were some management changes, and I just went contracting.
Okay.
So from 2011 to now, I've been freelancing, contracting. As a matter of fact, I actually had the ambition with someone to open my own company with him, but he flopped on me. So then I just went contracting, made some good money, and yeah, I've been contracting since then.
So one of the interesting things I think about, there's two things I want to talk to you about. One is that you really believed in education. So
yeah,
you did a lot of accountancy, you then did your MBA. But what I think is interesting is that you never really niched in an area. You never really niched in insurance or in banking or professional services. You always kept quite a breadth of knowledge, which I think has helped you further on. We'll talk about your present career and your present businesses now. But answer me that, A, about your education, why it was so important to you, and B, why you never really niched in a particular area.
Really interesting questions. Really interesting questions. So I think the education, you know, formed the revolution, right? Which is the Green Revolution, you know, which, as I said, as a teenager, I was involved in this, you know. We had a very proud leader called Maurice Bishop, you know, and he had part of his I don't know if you want to call it his drive to educate the people. As a matter of fact, one thing that revolution did was something called adult education. You know what I mean? Education for everyone. You know what I mean? We should all be, you know, be literate people. And I started reading a lot of books around that at the time, and I realized, and I must have seen a poster somewhere actually, probably in the airport at the time, that education is the pathway to prosperity or empowerment, and that stuck with me. You know, it stuck with me that that when you are educated, and for me, education is not just academic education. To me, when you are learned, when you know stuff, you can just make better decisions. It also opens doors for you.
Yeah.
So I made it my mission and my vision to educate myself continually. Right. I mean, even as we speak right now, I'm still doing training courses all now. Yeah. You know what I mean? I do training courses all the time. I mean, I haven't just studied accounts and business. I've done IT courses as well. I've done treasury courses. I've done a raft of different things. You know, I've done public speaking last year. You know, I've done marketing courses. You know, marketing training. I've even had a sales coach recently. Right. So for me, is that by doing this, you become kind of multi-skilled, and that probably leads on to the second part of it. To say, what do I specialize in? I would say I specialize in finance and business. Yeah. Everything I'm doing is around finance and business. but I do have a broad experience in the sense of, yes, I've done insurance, asset management, banking. Even within banking, I've done different things as well. I'm actually a specialist in investments. So one of the things I've done in financial services, most of the roles involve investments, investment accounting, investment operations. So investments, I would say, is the area I'm specialized in. It's not so easy to see that by just looking at my profile, but some of the biggest projects that I've worked on is to do with investments, investment operations. I've built investment systems. I've done a lot of investment projects, but I think by having a broad career, you're right, it prepared me for where I am right now. As a management consultant, as someone who can advise people in business. There isn't any area of business I can't speak about with some level of authority.
Right. So I totally agree about self-education. I'm massive on that. I think now sort of formal education takes you so far, but you still need to keep on listening. I listen to Audible regularly. I am always, or a podcast. There's a couple of podcasts which I still follow quite well. So I would totally agree. I think people should, and I talk about this a lot on my podcast, people should be always learning, be educating yourself. So I totally agree with that. So the question I was going to ask you was, did your broad education and broad breadth of knowledge help in your, so you've now set up RAC Management Consultancy. So I think it did, but why don't you tell me a little bit about your business?
Yes, so RAC Management Consultancy. So number one is that from working as a freelance contractor, I realized that a lot of businesses, as a matter of fact, even actually before that, a lot of people are in business, but not in the most efficient way.
Okay.
Yeah, either the processes are too manual, or either the people they have are not in the right roles, or either they're not aware of how to automate stuff, or their strategy is wrong. You know what I mean? So I realized that a lot of people, and I actually studied as well, that a lot of why businesses fail. And it's the fact. I mean, the same guy, Keith Cunningham, he talked about the 4%. Because after 10 years, 96% of all businesses fail.
Right.
So how do you be a 4% business? How do you be in the 4%? Well, you got to have the right people, the right processes, the right systems, the right strategy, right? And you got to understand all this together, how all this fit together. So I would say, number one, I want to have a very successful business, and I want to help people to have successful businesses. So my consultancy business, number one, is actually a registered accountancy firm with the ACCA. So I've got a practice license.
Yeah.
And therefore I can advise on tax matters, business matters. I can do everything as a consultant apart from, let's say, audit, doing financial audit. Yeah. What that means is that any business can come to me wanting any solution. Whether it's a technical solution, whether it's a business solution, and I could give them a solution or strategy for that within 72 hours.
Right.
And it means that I have the breadth and depth of knowledge to look at their challenge from a different angle. You know what I mean? It's one thing that actually I've even done while I was working in financial services. I was able to look at, I remember in my early career, they tried to do like a system, like a database, and it didn't work. I was not involved at the time. It didn't work. And I came on the scene, and I learned I studied what they're trying to do. And I told the financial controller, I said, I can do this. And he was like, really? I said, yeah, I can do it. But we have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And I did it. I built a push button reporting system in IT. I designed it, and I did it. I took them off Excel spreadsheets into an automated, full-blown Visual Basic system. You know what I mean? And that is the kind of expertise I have, and therefore as a consultant, I am here to help people. I'm here to help people who really want to streamline the business. They want to scale the business, or maybe they want to start up, but they want to run the business the right way. So I offer depth and breadth.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Let's just delve a little bit into the automating of processes. So from a financial point of view, how would you approach automating an investment area, for example? How would you go in the mindset of working out that you need to automate this? Let's think about how we can automate this. What would you use as your skill?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'll probably tell you something I actually did. So I remember, like, when I started working in financial services, so they were doing the investments in Excel. I mean, these were like, I mean, they was a smaller company, but they were doing a lot of stuff in Excel, and the asset manager was then sending them what is called these, there's legal tickets, transactional tickets, or whatever, you know what I mean, sending them stuff by email, etc. Yeah. And it's just simple. What I did, I put it in Access database, and I put some input forms. As a matter of fact, I built two databases, a backend and a front-end database.
Yeah.
And I put some input forms, and I said to the asset manager, just send me this Excel file in this particular format every time. So instead of emailing us the stuff, don't do that. Just fill in this template with these details in the same format every time. And when they send it, all we do, we just take it, copy, append it. Right. Append it into the database. And once it's all in the database, it's easy to report on. I mean, even as big as Aviva. I remember being at Aviva, not necessarily investment, but being at Aviva. And they had a reinsurance system, can't remember the name right now. But what they were doing, they were manually keying in stuff, like journals and stuff, into this system, right? Because the journals came from Guernsey. But then I actually realized that this system had the ability to do CSV outputs.
Yeah.
When I go, if it can do CSV outputs, it can do CSV inputs.
Yeah.
So again, what we did is that we said to the guy in Guernsey, right, don't send us these manual journals, these just, you create this template. I give them a template.
Yeah.
And I say, right, just send this to us. We turn it into CSV and we import it. And then you go on, all the numbers are there like magic. So because systems is basically input, output, process. It's like any computer, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's based on. So if the input is manual, you have to say, well, okay, that's manual, but the computer needs to process it. So what format does the computer need this in to process it? Because we want to move away from manual. So sometimes what you can actually do is even integrate two systems. Mm-hmm. You can integrate two systems again, like so you can integrate Excel with different things. You can integrate Access with different things. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because all you need to do is put a bit of code behind it. So in my early career, so I don't want to get too excited about this. In my early career, I used to do a bit of coding. I used to do a bit of VBA coding and VB coding, and it just join everything together. I mean, even Excel can speak to Access, it can speak to Word, it can speak to Outlook.
Yeah.
Once it's Microsoft, they all speak to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I was doing some research on you said that you'd bought some properties as well for financial freedom.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your property experience.
Yeah, so literally, and I said this, I said, like, one of the early things that we did in my early years as a youth, I remember one of our neighbors, they used to play Monopoly all the time. They play Monopoly all the time. Literally, that was like, we played for days. So when I came to London, and my first job was actually on Fenchurch Street, I was like, my God, hang on, Fenchurch Street Station. This is surreal, So I have to play Monopoly now, right? So I started my job in 2001 in the city, and I bought my first property in 2002.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I'm playing Monopoly, right?
Where did you buy?
In Morden.
In Morden, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I still have the house up until now, right?
Right.
And then the next 2 years is equity, right?
Yeah.
We mortgaged that.
Yeah.
But I bought some land back home in the Caribbean.
Okay.
And then, you know what I mean, then next couple of years, there's more equity again. Obviously, it's going up. But then all you do is that you just, you know, you buy an apartment somewhere. And all of a sudden, the extra income from this apartment over the mortgage can pay for the amount by which your mortgage went up.
Yeah. So I mean, I have a couple of properties, properties now, and yeah, it's a really good way. As you were saying, I actually did this before I read the book. It was the Robert Kiyosaki one about poor rich dad, poor dad, and he was talking about assets all the time. You should be building assets all the time, and I've been very inspired by that. And yeah, if you get the right property and you build an income that comes in, even if you have a mortgage on there, you can still build up enough money to maybe buy somewhere else, or if appreciation of the property goes up, you can release funds. There's definitely ways of doing it. I think it's a really good strategy that people sometimes think is very hard to start, but it's that first one. If you can get the deposit on that first one, you're pretty much ticking after that, aren't you?
And there's strategies. And I mean, there's strategies is that buy with someone, you know, do a half rent, half right. This is equity. I mean, if you look at properties every 10 years, the property price almost doubled. I mean, going back to that, as an accountant, I think one of the things that make me think about property is, as an accountant, on the balance sheet, the most fixed asset is lands and building.
Yeah.
So you want to own some of that, right? Because those are fixed assets. Those are assets that are most fixed, you know what I mean? Just pretty differential on property. So I did a course as well some time back anyway. I think it was by Rich Dad, Poor Dad Education, or whatever they might have called it. I mean, probably not Robert Kiyosaki, but somebody branding under his name.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to learn about not just buy to let. So my last deal I did, I mean, here in the UK, was a let to buy.
Right.
I didn't even know that exists. You can let out your house where you were living to buy another place.
Yeah.
And right now, actually, I'm talking about discussing with one of a business guy about doing some rent to rent deals. You know what I mean? You know, rent to rent and lease options and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a whole minefield in itself. Properties.
It is, and I would say anyone that's listening that's thinking about properties, I would say start with a buy to let, learn the process, understand it, then go to HMOs, and then, because rent to rent and lease options is if you go on the right course, you can learn the skills and you can get mentored correctly. But I would always suggest, like, start with the buy to let.
Yeah, I agree.
The process. I do like the process before more complicated strategies. But yeah, no, absolutely. There's lots of different ways of being able to skin the cat when it comes to properties. So
yeah.
Right, getting back to your business. How one of the questions I was thinking: how do you inspire other businesses? Whether it's on your online academy or whether it's working with your clients, how would you say that you inspire people?
Oh, good question. How I inspire them? Well, actually, let's put how I probably inspired one of my clients today. I mean, she's a brand new client, right?
Right.
And she came on and she has a business, but she don't get any customers. So I guess I always ask them, how did they find me? And she said, okay, she saw me on YouTube. I'm like, okay. She said she liked my energy, from YouTube. I said, okay. She said after she booked the webinar, she researched me. So a few people actually go on my website and they read my story.
Yeah.
So I guess my story inspires them. Number one. But I think is that when people start to work with me, I think my level of knowledge inspire them. I mean, so much so that, for example, there's one lady actually I was going to work with her, and I was actually written a marketing strategy for her. Yeah. I mean, and her son was asking me, "Can you deliver all that marketing stuff?" And he said, well, "Look, I did a master's in business. I mean, I have an MBA, but apart from that, I've done marketing training, not the marketing training that I teach in university." I've done digital marketing, you know what I mean? And like lady today, I was even showing her where her competitors are getting traffic from.
Right.
So I was basically doing what is called market intelligence. And then I work with people on customer intelligence, So even though I'm a finance and business, it's not just let's do a business. Is let's understand your competitor, let's understand your customer. And a lot of people, they're like, what? This is deeper than I thought.
Yeah.
So to some extent, they get inspired by as I said, by the breadth or the depth of my knowledge, or the things I know. I show them things that they did not even know existed.
And to be honest, every business owner should know marketing. It is that you need to know, to an extent, sales and marketing, don't you? You need to know the business, you need to know the area, because you got to be able to market to the right people to get the right clients, and then you need to be able to sell to them. Maybe you're not doing the selling, or you're not, but you need to be able to understand the processes to be able to run a business.
Yeah, well, to be quite honest, is an area that actually I am. Although I'm a finance business guy, but I'm actually specifically, as I said, I'm always learning, right? So I'm looking to specialize as well in digital marketing and stuff, because when I realized that a lot of people have businesses, and a lot of businesses that fail, I think they fail because they have a poor marketing strategy.
Yeah, I would 100% agree.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the product can be wrong, but you can sell a bad product to someone if it's well marketed.
I was just about to say that to you as well. That was just going to come out of my list there. You can have a really poor product, but if it's marketed very well, you can have a relatively successful business, can't you?
Correct. And you can have a great product, poorly marketed, and it doesn't crack as well. So marketing is essential.
Yeah, 100% agree. So tell me about your online academy. Is this something relatively new?
Yeah, so I'm setting up this thing called the FBI Academy, which is Finance, Business, and Investing Academy. I'm going to be launching within the next few weeks some online courses, which people can go on and learn how to manage. First of all, how to make, manage, and multiply money.
Right.
And then I'll also have something around like business growth acceleration program.
Okay.
So actually, I designed the kind of the programs already, and I'm kind of halfway through building the programs.
Right.
And I'm going to be setting up online within the next few weeks. So I would say by next few weeks, by middle of September, definitely, all these things should be online.
Right.
And people can
go and find that.
But yeah, well, so basically, my name is Royston Cumberbatch. I'll be using the domain Royston Cumberbatch. So it's a good place to find it. I'm going to be rebranding one of my sites, which is called Money Management Education, which is mmedu.co.uk. I'll be putting all my links on there. Currently, the site is a bit shabby. And yeah, so people can find by Googling my name, they will find all my stuff in the future, because what I'm also doing, I'm in the process of just making sure that my online brand is quite strong.
Yeah.
I'm actually working with a brand specialist right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so another thing that I saw on your LinkedIn profile, that you're an award-winning speaker. So
yeah.
Relatively recently as well. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So when I decided to kind of do this business full time, and to really help a lot of people, to serve people through my knowledge, through my story, I decided, and I was a good speaker from school, because I used to tell poems, and I was the president of the Students' Council, and I was quite active in school. But I realized that I need to take my public speaking to a different level. So last year, I joined up something called the Public Speakers Academy, Andy Harrington, and and I was trained by him. I actually did the elite program last year, so I graduated from the elite program, which is one of the highest level he have in his academy. And every quarter he runs a competition. Okay, it's around 80 to 100 people, and you start off in groups, 8 or 10, and then there is from that group, then you go to semifinals. Maybe, and from that semifinals, you go to finals. So, yeah, I end up this time I reached in the final, and I kind of got the second place, and I become an award-winning speaker. And hopefully there'll be much more awards to come.
Like it. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the podcast. I've got 6 questions that I ask everyone on my podcast. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer, depending on what you want to say.
Yep.
So first question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
I think the best decision I've made is to become a qualified accountant.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
The best piece of advice I would say is to, don't rent, buy.
Right.
So I mean, even though I was interested in property, I actually met someone who told me, "Are you renting?" I'm like, "Yeah, buy property." So yeah, it was good. It was good. That was a great advice. Yeah.
Who's helped you most in your career? If it's not one person, you can name a couple of people, but who helped you most?
Who's helped me most? Well, I would say in terms of help, I probably give all credit to my mom as a person who is like, number one, she prays for me every day up until now. Yeah. Number two, she put everything she had online, her house, everything online as security for me to come to the UK. So I would say my mom, but then I would say like when I started off in financial services, I would say is a guy called Richard Sutlow, because he he showed, when I started working with him, I was quite impressed with, he was just like showing me everything he knew. I was like, man, God, and he was so good in Excel. He was so good in spreadsheets. I couldn't even keep up with him. But he was just like, she was just like, he was not holding back anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you can get that in. So I've worked in professional services for 13, 14 years. And I think there definitely are people within the financial services which are very open and very helpful and supportive.
Yeah,
career. So
you're right. I mean, they even sponsored my MBA, you know what I mean? So all credits to them. I mean, they gave me my first job in financial services. All credits to Mr. Richard Sutlow. He used to be my mate for a long, long time, but I must go back and touch with him.
Okay. Any regrets?
Any regrets? I do have one or two regrets. Probably like, relationship wise. I remember I had a very cute young lady I used to date, and I could have gone on to marry her, and it didn't happen. And I guess she's happily married now, and I guess I'm not, right? So, so relationship wise, made a couple bad mistakes. Probably, obviously, it's a decision, and you have to live with it. But normally in life, I try not to live by regret. I try not to live by regret. Oh, as well, actually, one of the biggest regrets I think I had was when I was working in one of my first jobs in Grenada, working on a beach for a hotel. I think I messed up. I made some bad decisions. I did some wrong things, and yeah, I think my mind wasn't straight.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of my two boys, my two sons. Yeah, so one is 21 and he's doing really well. He's just.
You've got a son who's 21.
Yeah.
You don't look old enough.
Thank you.
Son of 21. Wow, Royston.
Yeah, thank you. So he's just about to go into his second year in his last year at university, and he's in Manchester. He's doing law, but he's already an entrepreneur. He's already doing stuff. He's already a DJ. He has his own brand. I'm proud of him. My second son is 15. He's into football. He's very bright. He's one of the brightest in his school. You know what I mean? So I would say I'm proud that actually I was able to mentor them and able to help them to become very good young men. You know what I mean? And yeah.
What does legacy mean to you?
Yeah, good question. I mean, for me, legacy means, leaving a stamp on the universe. So not just for you, but for...
That's big, Royston. The universe. Not just your local area, not just the country, the whole universe.
Yeah, when I say the universe, I mean, if someone Googles your name in 100 years, they can say, he wrote this book, or he did this, or he helped 1,000 people, or he did something for charity, you know what I mean? Or so to have a lasting memory on civilization.
And you You've written a book as well, haven't
Yeah,
you?
yeah. So I've written a book called Money Management for Business Owners and Entrepreneurs, and I'm in the process of writing at least 2 more books. One is going to be called The Journey.
Right.
I'll probably figure out what else goes to the journey. Actually, I might call it something around like, the 7 dimensions. Sorry, The Journey, the 7 dimensions of poverty to prosperity, something along those lines.
Okay. And you gave me a bit of stick on my podcast course that I've not written a book yet. I haven't forgotten that yet, Royston. It's on my to-do list.
Yeah, I mean,
it's still here.
Yeah, one of the things I learned, by the way, from the public speaking stuff is that you cannot call yourself an authority on something if you're not an author.
Right.
Because the word authority came from the word author.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. I suppose it does, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm an authority on money management.
Excellent. Last question. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
So people can find me on, obviously, LinkedIn is a good place. I think Royston Andrew Cumberbatch. I'm on Facebook, Royston Andrew Cumberbatch. I use my full name. They can find my website. Just Google my name, Royston Andrew Cumberbatch. My website is racmax.com, which is RAC for my name, macs.com, RAC Management Consultancy. And yeah, I think once you Google my name, you find me, Royston Andrew Cumberbatch or Royston Cumberbatch. My name is very unique.
You'll find your podcast soon.
And they can find my podcast. They can find many things about me. And hopefully a few people will be getting in contact, for a few words of inspiration.
Absolutely. I hope they do. Thank you, Royston. Thank you so much for your time. It's been fascinating speaking to you.
It's been a great interview. Thank you very much for your time and for having me on your show.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.